Welcome to the Man Up, Man Down podcast, presented by Volker Beluda and David Pawsey. We discuss the pressures and challenges faced by men approaching middle age that we're often too embarrassed to speak about with our friends. You can find us online at www.manupdown.com. Enjoy the show and don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review.
Alrighty, welcome to another episode of Man Up, Man Down. And what we haven't done in ages is a solo or duo episode. So here we are, David and me, just David and me, talking about all things, I don't know, middle age, right? Middle age men, middle age women, I suppose. I don't know. We don't really have an agenda for today, do we, David?
No, but you've taken your glasses off, so I can tell you mean business.
Yeah, it's the old trick. You look more intelligent when you wear glasses, right? Then again, in our age, everyone wears glasses, so you probably look more intelligent if you don't wear glasses.
No, there's a very good book called The Alter Ego. I can't remember who it's written by, but it just sort of talks about how you can take on a persona at moments of impact. So it sort of talks about, I think Beyonce is one of them, but she's got a persona called Sasha Fierce. But I think that there's a tennis player as well. But basically, it talks about how, in moments when you perhaps feel a bit insecure, you kind of take on a persona. But one of the things he talks about is that people do naturally, if you're wearing glasses, they automatically sort of give you added respect, that you give off an air of intelligence and authority. So there we go.
There we go. I'm just Googling this book. Is it worthwhile reading?
Yeah, definitely.
To be honest, it's the alter ego effect. There we go.
Yeah, that's it.
Included in premium on Spotify. For those people that still don't know that Spotify does audiobooks, I think most people now have a Spotify account, right? If they're not with Apple Music, and if you do, you get free audiobooks, so you can, look at Audible and go like, you're really expensive, because with Spotify I get my audiobooks, I get my music, and I get my podcast, and I get this podcast in particular, and just picking.
That is a very good plug. Very smooth. So yeah, well, there we go. Please like and follow and subscribe to all our social channels. We probably don't say that enough, but yeah, I mean that is what really helps us. So if you can follow our LinkedIn page, follow our Instagram account, I'm gonna have to reel off the what those handles are, and I don't know off the top of my head, but just like and follow us on Spotify.
We can talk about our book already as well. So there's going to be a book coming, which is 60-70% written. So I just had another call yesterday with one of our guests, just confirming her contribution to our book. So that will be coming in the next couple of weeks. So we have a few guests that contribute to the book. We have, I think, about 20 chapters on various topics that we discussed on the podcast, with obviously additional information, commentary, and content from the podcast. And yeah, we're very excited. So we hope to launch it, if I be eager, I'd say summer, but definitely this year, I think.
It will certainly be ready for your Christmas stocking. Let's put it that way. Like we're planning well ahead.
That's the spirit. So that's what we're working on in the background. We're also working on season 4 already, if people believe it or not. So we're pretty much on track for season 3, which will finish in the summer with our 100th episode. So I'm personally very excited about that. That's my first podcast going to 100 episodes. I think the other podcast was just shy of 90 episodes, I think. But on that note, a bit of self-promotion here. My old podcast, Stories of Success, I got approached by a chap called Craig to run that podcast. And so we're going to revive it as early as March. So, I'm coming back on another podcast, but more in the background, as a founder, as a podcast founder, and maybe occasional, guest or guest appearance whilst Craig will be running it. So quite excited that, I always liked the podcast, but that the concept itself, stand the trust of time. Is that what you say? Or the
test of time.
test of time. There we go. Trust and test of time to, and then, we'll see a second life almost, right? Which is quite nice to see.
Well, and will that be around Easter that you resurrect that?
Are we?
There we go.
I won't put it away after 3 days, though. Future state.
Yeah, well, that might make you a bit cross if you did that.
Very good, dude.
That's what people tune in for.
Yeah. I couldn't have said it better myself. I'm trying to top this now. That's going to be difficult.
Well, so what have you been up to recently?
What have I been up to? Oh, more self-promotion. So I'm still doing some fractional work. Fractional sales consulting work, sales coaching work, a lot of mentoring work. I was just writing on a LinkedIn post. I'm about to announce another involvement in another accelerator in the AI space. So I'm very excited about that. And I'm building my coaching business, or continue to build my coaching business around executive coaching, emotional intelligent assessments. So I'm being qualified to do the EQI 2.0 assessments. So by the time this goes live, I will be certified.
So, sorry. Can you talk a bit more about that? What emotional intelligence is? What the sort of those, I don't know, those words and numbers that you just read out.
Here. How much time do we have?
30 seconds.
So emotional intelligence is the ability to recognize, understand, manage, and influence your own emotions and the emotions of others. So basically, you're aware of your emotions and the emotions of others. And I don't want to say you use it to your advantage, but you do essentially, right? You drive more resilience, stress relief, empathy, conflict resolution, better decision making. So emotional intelligence is almost like either an umbrella term or an underlying principle of being a better leader, being more authentic leader. And then if you then bring it into organizations, you get better performing organizations as well. So it kind of ties, if I say my executive coaching business, with my interest to develop organizations with better sales performance. All ties nicely together. So that's really what I'm focusing on. So anyone interested in finding out more about it, just email me or drop me a direct message on LinkedIn. There we go. We don't need my usual at doing the podcast. We just have me live, right? So I'm regularly doing talks at the moment for companies on how to develop emotional intelligence in organizations. That's what I spend a lot of my time with.
You teach evil corporate leaders to become more human. Is that what you're saying?
Basically, yeah. If you believe it or not, I can go into companies and do this EQI test and can tell you how emotional intelligent you are and where where you score lower and why. Then we can explore that to see how can we better yourself. So at time of recording, because I'm doing this course, I had a second assessment, and we looked at the back-end data. So I'm very emotional intelligence in terms of my scoring. So I've done the test twice for various reasons, and the scoring was all very, very similar. But just some nuances is really interesting to pick up on. So that's where I get really geeky and look at the back end and the figures and go like, oh, if I had answered a 2 here, my results could have been slightly different. And
Are they always the same questions each time? Or
yes,
in it? Yeah, right.
standardized test, scientifically proven, been around for 20 odd years. So what are you working on? Let's not only talk about me. I mean, I love talking about myself, but we only have 40 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, well, I don't know, work's work. I don't know, I like to talk more about my interests outside of work. I could talk about content marketing, content marketing and copywriting till the cows come home. But yeah, I don't think that's what people tune in for.
You don't know.
But yeah, no, I've been getting yeah, just I don't know, focusing on a lot on exercise. Oh, something that I haven't told you about actually. Met up with a guy yesterday. Well, actually, I might have told you a bit about this, but yeah, met up with a guy yesterday. He's someone that came to our live event in Brighton back in November. Yeah, well, November 2023. God, God, that feels like a long time ago.
I know.
But basically, he called me up a few weeks ago. He works like in the trades. Well, he's works in construction. He's a builder, and he said, I've just got so many of my guys that are just in a bad place at the moment. But anyway, this chap got in touch with me, just saying that a lot of guys are struggling. I mean, we obviously we ran a session for an organisation called Sheet for Brains in January, all about beating the January blues. Sheet for Brains is a mental health sort of support group primarily for the printing industry. Hence the paper sheets for brains. But basically, yeah, this chap called me up. So obviously, I think we all do get a bit down, in January when the sun's. I'm just looking out the window. The sun is shining at the moment, but we've had a few weeks of miserable weather. Well, again, which we expect this time of year. But so yeah, this is a time of year where I think a lot of people feel a bit down. But yeah, so he sort of called me up and I sort of said, well, funnily enough, I said, I've been sort of thinking about trying to get more of a physical group together. So after a few drinks, I decided on the imaginatively titled Twat Club, where basically, just men can meet up, have a walk, bring their dogs,
Brilliant.
and talk about, well, if they've acted like a twat that week or if they feel like someone's been a twat to them. But yeah, just sort of talking through things. Yeah, so that's sort of something that I'm sort of say excited about, but we sort of said, well, if it's just us two turning up, then it'll work for us. But yeah, I mean, the sort of the thing that we did for Sheet for Brains, I mean, we've sort of got a little sort of workshop that we put together. So here comes another little plug. But I mean, it is a toolkit for beating the January blues, where we sort of talked about nutrition, sleep, well, everything we talk about on the podcast, but we have sort of packaged it up into a webinar / workshop that we could deliver in person, over 2 hours over a day. But that is something that we haven't started promoting sort of online, but yeah, that's something that we can do, come into your organization and just sort of talk about mental health, physical health, and the whole holistic sort of approach around it. So yeah, I mean, that's, yeah, I mean, it's interesting that, well, and I guess, again, this is why we started up the podcast, but, I do love what I do. I love writing, I love sort of getting into customers' heads and coming up with, sort of creative ideas to attract them. But yeah, I guess, sort of, there is a big part of me that, I guess would like to sort of, well, it would be good to, as always, we're looking at ways to keep the podcast going financially. It is a struggle, it is a challenge. So that is another way that, we could, as I say, help make a difference to organizations. I'm sure, that is something that companies have in their budget. I know, a lot of the companies I work with have a sustainability budget, which is both environmental and, sort of human resource sustainability. And I think that is sort of something that we do overlook, that, we are a resource. we do burn out. And if you're a company, you want to protect your most precious resource, which is your staff. I mean, AI is taking over in a lot of ways, but well, for at least the next 10 years, I think us humans still need to be involved somehow. Um, so I think I just turned that into a very smooth pitch, Volker.
I think so, yeah. I still don't know. So you launched a walking group. Is that what he's saying, basically?
Um, it, we haven't quite decided yet.
Yeah.
We're basically we're gonna. I think we're sort of just contacting people that are immediate, people that we know in the area. And it will perhaps be at a weekend, but yeah, it's well, we'll find out when people are sort of most available. You can bring your dog. We'll see how that pans out. That might add extra levels of stress, definitely with Archie. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's that thing of trying to create a space for men that is their own time. But at the same time, you don't want it to be another pressure of something you've got to get to at the weekend. So, it is, I mean, and I mentioned it to one of my friends in the office, and he was like, "Oh yeah, I'd be interested in that." And I was like, "Oh, dogs are welcome." And he was like, "Oh yeah, great, great." And it was, and that wasn't something that I'd factored in. It's like, oh yeah, well, again, it's habit stacking. Obviously, it's like if you want to build a new habit, you try and attach it to an existing habit. So, and as we've sort of said on this podcast, we obviously there are lots of great men groups that meet and sit in a circle, but sort of one of the things that we've talked about is that often men are more comfortable talking shoulder to shoulder rather than face to face.
I mean, it's interesting what you're saying there, because I think where I'm struggling with that, and it's exactly, I think where most men struggle, it's like, oh, it's another thing at the weekend, right? Most of us have, as I know you do, football duties. So,
Oh yeah.
you're driving around the kids at the weekend, let it be karate, football, ballet, whatever, horse riding, not that my kid do all of this, by the way. Uh,
All up and down the side of the football pitch. Focus on its horse doing ballet.
there's so much to do. Chase the kids for their homework, doing homework with them, cooking a nice meal, spending time with the wife, the partner, and then fitting in another activity, just to go for a walk. And I think, and I'm guilty of that, right? I think we need to make it a priority. We need to do that, because it helps us so much just to air, what's happening during the week. And not doing it, if I say Friday night in the pub, over 10 or 15 beers, right? Which is probably what most of us do. I mean, I don't, because I don't drink beer, red wine or bottle of wine. But that's basically what I'm saying. So we should make it a priority. And I think that's why that La Soul works so well, right? Because you're taking your kids at the weekend, so you say to your spouse, you say, "Hey, listen, I'm off, I'm taking care of the kid. Off you go, meeting lots of other blokes, while the kids entertain themselves, right?" That's why football works to a certain extent as well. If you find great mates at football, right? Because
Ones that break your ankle.
yeah, whether you play or whether you watch, right? You might find someone else you can, even if you talk to someone you don't know that well, but you still air yourself,
Yeah.
it still works.
Yeah, and I mean, and you've sort of touched on a couple of interesting points there. I mean, one, when this guy first got in touch with me, he's like, "I don't want it to be in the pub," and I think, I guess that's sort of something that I've noticed, is yeah, sort of people struggling with mental health issues. It can come out after several pints in the pub, and it doesn't often come out in a healthy, constructive way.
Correct.
Um, so it is, and again, sort of with football, it's sort of and I haven't been to a match for a while, but that's sort of a big part of, especially has got to get it in there. Colchester United are doing so well at the moment, the best we've done in a long, long time. So that's one of the things that I'm most happy about. But we're not in the same division as Crawley now, but I'd go to games at Crawley, and and basically, and I'll be sat with the Colchester fans, and they've been drinking on the train or the coach up there, so 3:00 in the afternoon, they're pretty hammered, and as I say, Colchester United were doing well this season, but we get used to losing a lot. And and like these guys are just furious, and it's not like I go, "Yay, we've let in another goal," but these guys are like incandescent with rage over like a refereeing decision, and I'm like, my God, as I say, I love Colchester United. It's a massive, massive part of my life. Particularly, I used to go with my dad. But yeah, I'm like, you spent your weekend spending a load of money on getting miserable and angry. And, and if we'd won, it might turn out different. But yeah, and again, it's sort of, I guess we've kind of, programmed isn't the right word, but, we've as men, I guess we kind of get used to, oh, well, that's how I let out my emotions or energy, it's
Yeah.
so I guess it's sort of, well, and you mentioned Dan Lassalle, Dan Flanagan from Dad Lassalle.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he is someone that I've been meaning to get in touch with just to sort of get some his advice. And and again, it's sort of, on one hand, I'm like, we interviewed so many great organizations, and it is almost like, well, and I'm not a million miles away from Brighton, but it is a bit of a trek. And again, it's like, well, it's like an hour and a half of traveling time, and and it's like, I know that I need to be in that environment. I mean, I've a bit of a reveal, but I'm having a break from counselling at the moment because I felt in a good place. And my counsellor said, "Oh, well, what? We've been working together for quite a few years. I think since before the pandemic or during. Oh, I don't know. I can't remember. Oh, but he was like, "Well, what are you going to do?" And I'm like, "Well, we haven't published the episode yet." I'm like, "Oh, well, we interviewed Freddie. Is it Freddie? Kenny? Sorry, Kenny. We interviewed Kenny." And it's like, well, he's got an amazing online group, and there's this and that. And again, I'm like, I'm always, I put the, so I'll get on that lunchtime call tomorrow, or, I'll go to that group, oh, there's one on Wednesday night. I can't do it this Wednesday. I'll go next Wednesday. And it's something that you mentioned to me. I mean, an earlier WhatsApp conversation, but yeah, there's always something that kind of comes up and gives you an excuse to put it off. So, and fortuitously, as I say, Matt got in touch, and and it's like, well, actually, if I'm the one that's kind of a major linchpin of it, I've got to turn up.
Yeah.
But
That's great energy doing it. So
well, and and yeah, it's sort of, well, and it is almost like, well, actually, get this going, but then maybe try and organise bigger meetups with some of these other groups, sort of once a year or whatever. But yeah, it's it's obviously with Dad Lassalle, I think, well, the USP was tackling social isolation in dads.
yeah.
And it's sort of, well, I mean, so one of the things that we were talking about when I met up with Matt yesterday, well, there's like, there is a lot of social isolation, and you can see your colleagues every day, and especially like on a building site, there's going to be banter, but you might not want to open up to your work colleagues, and that's fine. We all need a bit of privacy, and we all need right environment to open up. But and again, I've lost my train of thought. But I know what I was going to say. But basically, I think I'm going to sound like an old fart now. But young men in their 20s and 30s, it's and I've sort of talked about how sort of the job that my dad had. I mean, he got relatively senior, but the retirement, well, he retired, I think, before he was 60, or, he retired a lot earlier than we will. Man, Carl will be at me. But it's, well, I guess what I'm saying is that, I think there is obviously a mentality of, well, and we recorded financial one, last week, but, the generation before us could accumulate wealth a lot more easily. The cost of living was a lot better. Yeah, it's a lot more affordable. And, sort of, and I think, we sort of, well, like that we sort of quite lucky, or, I guess there are a lot of unlucky, but, there's a lot of people that I know that sort of did all right at the house, managed to get on the housing market, on the property ladder at the right time. Especially, when there was a period of like 120% mortgages because property prices were just, going up. Then obviously the credit crunch kind of put a big stop to that. But, I think, well, it was more of a struggle for us to get on the property ladder in this country than it was our parents. And now it's like, actually, for someone, a younger generation, it's even harder. And so both me and Matt just happened to see 24 hours in police custody. Like not something that I regularly watch, but basically it was about drug dealing in Norfolk. And there was this guy, basically, like, the police arrested one guy and found like kilos of meth in his property. Got his phone, and they basically found like photos of someone that had stored some drugs for him. Yeah. And basically, long story short, they sort of bash in this guy's door, drag him out of bed in front of his kids and his wife. And he's like, "What have I done? What have I done?" And I mean, obviously, he got sent away for 10 years. Yeah. And, it's like he'd held on to drugs for his friend, but, but he didn't have a criminal record. He said he'd been arrested once when he was 16. As I say, he was in his 20s and 30s. Yeah. He'd basically been offered 15 grand to look after these drugs. He never got the money. So, but he was like, there's some weeks, and I think he was a brickie or something. He's like, there's some weeks where I bring home £60 a week. And, and he's like, I'm trying to support a family. I'm in debt. And, I got offered a lot of money for doing something that he thought, wasn't, well, didn't make him a criminal mastermind. And yeah, and it's sort of, I guess I sort of like put all these things together, and it's like, wow, that poor guy, like, it's that thing of how many people find themselves in a situation like that, where it's like, well, I know this is wrong. I know that I could get in trouble if I get caught, but, at the end, and seeing how devastated he was over the whole situation, as I say, he wasn't a hardened criminal. The guy that he was holding on to it for, I mean, he was basically involved, basically it was a drug line from Colombian cartels into Norfolk, like one of the sort of sleepier sort of, you kind of get, when you think of Norfolk, you don't think of cartels, But it just sort of shows the pressure that, young men are under. And, it's the things that a lot of people are sort of forced into just to get by from, day to day.
I mean, there's a cost of living crisis, and jobs, there are less jobs available. Although our economy grew right in Q4, right?
But yeah, 0.1%, wasn't it?
I mean, I'm not political, but when I still believe in Keir Starmer. I mean, you don't hear much from him, which I think is a good sign, because I believe he's relentlessly working a way to make this country better. Now, this is as much hope as anything else, because I don't have any proof, and as I say, I don't want to get political. But I think where I'm struggling, and that's quite interesting, given my sales pitch earlier about sales, right, and revenue. Whilst I'm a firm believer that I can improve companies' revenue, I also struggle to see that companies have a continuous growth cycle. Like in advertising technology, there's a big company that literally at time of recording just lost 30% or so on the stock market, or 30% of their value. And the CEO just went on LinkedIn and said, guys, after 33 quarters of continuous growth, we had one quarter where we got knocked down by 7% or something like that. But of course, whoop, we're taking millions off, right? And he goes like, fuck it. I mean, he didn't say it like that, but he says, fuck it. In every good movie, someone gets knocked down, the hero gets knocked down to get back up again and does it even better. And I get all this, and it's all nice talk. But who really expects a company to grow, I don't know, 200% every year? Or whatever the numbers are.
Yeah, the shareholders.
Yeah, of course, the shareholders. But let's be realistic. If I grew my business by 200% every fucking year, I didn't have to do this podcast anymore, right? We have to be realistic sometimes. Sales, becomes more complicated. People are more cautious. People are more informed. Sales is different than it was 10, 20 years ago. But even 10, 20 years ago, you didn't have continuous growth. So for a country, when Germany is in the shits, right? They had contraction, I think, of the economy for the last 6 or 8 quarters. No one's talking about it. So I think having continuous growth is a challenge, and expectations are a challenge, right? And sometimes, to your point, right, in terms of, I never wanted to go on the property ladder. It was actually my wife who said we should buy a house, and I'm like, really? Buying a house? Like how?
Yeah, sorry, I'll let you continue, because that was something I wanted to ask you about.
Whether I own my house.
Well, no, I know you own your own house.
The rich bank owns the majority.
Well, yeah, but go on.
I thought let's just rent. Let's just not bother. Am I glad we bought? Probably am, right? Because I still bought at the time that house prices doubled and stuff. But the chap we had on about financial stability, he bought in a time where house prices went up 2, 3, 4, 5, I don't know, 1,000%, whatever it was. And I think it's, sometimes it's just nice to say, you know what, I'm happy with what I have. I don't need a second house and a third car and 200% growth. I'm content, and I'm focusing more on the things that are really important to me. And like you mentioned family earlier, and not that family isn't important to me, and hobbies, but a lot of my hobbies are also the work I'm doing. So I'm living the dream of my hobbies being my profession, which not everyone is that lucky. That's why I always talk about work, but it's not work for me. It's fun. Sorry, you wanted to say something about houses?
Oh yeah, I mean, it was just so we're recording at a different time of the day, and obviously now I'm just being completely, well, I'm glowing in the sun, but
Don't complain. It's still February.
oh man, yeah, I'm gonna get straight out there in a moment and soak up as much as I can. But I remember like in the days of a financial journalist at the Financial Times that one of the I remember sitting in a buy to let kind of seminar, and Germany came up as the example, but it was kind of like in Britain, it's this thing of like, well, an Englishman's home is his castle, and it is really intrinsic that we have to own our own property, and it is a life goal. Whereas, in Germany, it was very much like a rental kind of society. And I think as a result, it's like landlords don't have the same reputation that perhaps they have in this country, that, they're money grabbing, and there's a lot more protections around the rental market. So, yeah, I mean, that was sort of going to be my question, like before you sort of mentioned that it was your wife that kind of drove that decision to a certain extent.
Yeah, because I'm not used to it. I mean, my parents own their own house. My brother owns his own house. I think most people in our family do, or have built their own one. But yeah, it's not as common, I think it becomes more and more popular now with my generation to say, actually let's own a house. But yeah, it's not. I believe, I haven't lived in Germany for 24 years, so I believe it's less of a buoyant market. It's not like you buy and then you sell. So it's more, I'm settling in Berlin. I'm buying a house in Berlin. That's where I spend the rest of my days, and I leave that house, when they carry me out. Whilst I think the mentality here is slightly different, right? So, I'm already thinking about my next move, right? I'm thinking, this is a house. I always thought this is a forever home. But I'm now thinking more and more, once the kids are grown up and hopefully leave the house and, can leave the house. And that, I think, is a big question, right? Will they be able to leave and get their own property, et cetera, et cetera? So that's a big question for our kids' generation. But if all possible, I already know where I want to spend the next, chapter of my life, and then where I would like to buy a different property. And I don't want to go somewhere and rent a property. I want to go and sell up here and live somewhere else. And I think that mentality is different in Germany.
Yeah.
Bodenständig.
What does that mean?
Oh, that means bodenständig. I don't know. I need to Google it, what it means in English. I can't translate shit. Bodenständig in English. Like steadfast, down to earth.
Oh, right.
Rooted in the soil, long established. You put your roots down and you stay there.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, that was going to be the phrase that I used, that it is seen more as putting your roots down rather than an investment in the future, something to pass on to your kids. But, I mean, I think you sort of hit the nail on the head. And again, it sort of exacerbates the whole sort of social divide. And, and again, coming back to my friend on 24 hours in police custody, it's like, well, my children might be able to get on the property ladder if we when we downsize. And
yeah,
I mean, and I have to say, sort of with, the experience of my dad and from breaking my ankle, I guess I'm a bit more, well, actually, I'm probably going to move into that bungalow, sort of, 20, 30 years earlier than, doing it while it's, I mean, moving's incredibly stressful anyway. But yeah, I basically want to move when I'm still capable, and it's yeah. So you not feel like you're forced to move. You're making that decision, and setting yourself up for the next stage of your life.
Yeah, and we talked about retirement earlier a little bit, right? Given my pension pot, plus my age and everything else, I anticipate to have to work until I'm 70, 75 anyway. But as I said, I enjoy working, so I'm probably going to work until I'm 75 or 80, because I cannot imagine, and assuming all going well, of course, and let's say we live to 90 or 100, sitting around for 35 years not knowing what to do with myself. I will keep myself busy, but I might as well make it useful and still earn some pennies. And I think our generation will naturally just work longer, not necessarily because we also have to, but we live longer, we live hopefully healthier lives longer, and that means we're going to be more engaged in society and work then ultimately as well.
Well, I think also, desk workers, we will be, well, yeah, and and sort of what I've said there about, I don't want to talk about work, but
Yeah.
I guess I'm, well, yeah, I sort of see myself as, well, I'll be working to a certain extent. I mean, sort of one of our neighbours has moved away, but he's in his late 70s, early 80s. But up until very recently, he was still doing consultancy work, and I guess that's, and also that's, I think, something that we've sort of talked about in that there, we almost seem to disregard the experience of elders and the wisdom of elders. We almost seem to, like, as a society, it's like, well, what is the next technology that can take us forward, rather than, well, what is the wisdom and experience that we've built up. Um, and so, yeah, I think, well,
There is a very good thing with the elderly, and we're gonna launch season 4 with a very interesting episode on that, which we haven't recorded yet, but it's gonna be all about the elderly and their contribution to society and life. There's a lot we still have to give, even at the tender age of 75 and beyond. Let's just leave.
well, yeah, well, obviously I've just, tease it less. I didn't want to talk about my birthday, but I've obviously just passed 47, and and so
Just as we're coming to an end, I can now talk about how drunk you were on your birthday.
right, let's cut that bit out.
You say you're gonna talk about it. Now we can.
Well, it was going to be in the context of kind of seeing how, well, I don't see myself as old or past it or anything, but and I guess, well, but no, but it's this, and sort of talking with Nat, and hearing what some of the younger guys that work for him, and as I say, sort of seeing how some people react in the pub when they've had a few. It's like, oh, actually, there is, what I've learned over the last 15 years of personal development, mental health, mindfulness, exercise, looking after yourself and regulating yourself, regulating your emotions. It's, I forget that actually that is knowledge that I can perhaps pass on to someone to, make their lives and their family lives better.
I think we need to come to an end, David.
We do. Well, just for this episode, not for.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So that was another Men Up Men Down episode. That's a solo duo episode. But hope you enjoyed it. Maybe some thought-provoking thoughts. Maybe just
Let us in German words.
Yeah, maybe you learned some German words. Some sehr tolle Wörter. Yeah. My German gets quite rusty. It's quite funny. So yeah, if you have any questions, if you have any suggestions for guests as well for season 4, let us know. We gonna go and get a couple of our American friends on the podcast from season 4. So tipping a toe into the Atlantic Ocean, yeah. The ocean. Towards Trump country. So I think it's gonna be interesting, the questions. So we got some plans, and we got to have another solo episode in season 3 anyway. And we of course have the celebratory episode, which we probably should do in person or so, and have a glass of bubbly.
Yeah, no, I was thinking, do we need to sort of perhaps, when we do our duo episodes, do it in person.
In person in the pub, we keep talking about that.
Yeah. But the pubs keep throwing us out.
I wasn't there that long.
Well, you got thrown out first by your wife.
Great. So on that note, I'm going to throw myself out and see you all next time. Thanks.
Like and subscribe. Like and subscribe.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode. Feel free to reach out to Volker or David via our website, www.manupdown.com, or podcast@manupdown.com, with any feedback or to let us know what topics you'd like us to cover in the future. Hear you again soon.